on to our next story here. We're looking at a possible strike that could be really significant, and that is the United Auto Workers Union. I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with them, but I definitely am. And I want to tell you that if the UAW goes on strike, this is going to be huge. I want to give a shout out here to Case Study QB for this clip. Let's go ahead and dive in as they discuss this on Fox Business.
Members of the United Auto Workers Union overwhelmingly voting to strike against the big three Detroit automakers if they can't agree on contracts when they expire in 3 weeks.
Edward Lawrence joins us live from the White House with more on this. Edward.
Yeah, Guy and Dagan, 97% of the UAW auto workers voted to strike if one is needed. And this could affect Stellantis, GM, Ford, all their abilities to make cars. Now, the union president says that the people were just concerned and fed up with living paycheck to paycheck. Inflation under President Biden has gone up about 16% since the day he took office. Food at home is up about 20% in that time.
You guys see this? 15.8% all goods inflation, 19.7% food at home. Again, they're living paycheck to paycheck. These are the auto workers. It's happening all across this country.
Now, when it comes to the union, the acting labor secretary told me this month the administration is monitoring the situation.
The president believes in, as I do, the collective bargaining process. And we've seen it work. We've seen it work in very high-profile situations. UPS and Teamsters announced a tentative agreement. So we trust that process, and we know the parties are still talking.
About 2 hours ago, President Biden said that the big three automakers should add jobs and increase wages.
There will obviously be concerned. I think that there should be a circumstance where the jobs that are being replaced, good jobs, they should go to the first choice, should go to the UAW member that has the job, and the salary should be commensurate.
Now, former Chrysler CEO Bob Nardelli worries how a strike at this moment would hurt the economy. He also worries that a deal could push inflation.
Their workers are trying to make a living. You certainly could understand the environment that's out there today. UPS settled at 40%. The head of the Teamsters said it was unbelievable, legendary settlement of what they're going to get. Now, that settlement is going to basically inflate inflation.
So the current
Listen to what he just said. Now, listen, this is the CEO of Chrysler, former CEO of Chrysler. So this guy is most likely already retired. He got his. You see how people talk when they already got theirs? He got his. He's good to go. He's all set. The other people who are stuck working at these other companies that are part of the UAW, they haven't received theirs. In fact, what they're making in reference to wages is a lot lower than what he would have been making at that point in time. So you have to understand, again, we're looking at the wage difference when we talk about the cost of living as well and the generation gap. When we talk about what people are making, this guy's up there. When we're talking about what people are making in the 70s and the 80s, it's very different compared to what people are making today. And wages have not adjusted for inflation. So it's always easy for people to be like, oh, well, if they increase this just like UPS and they give them what they're asking for, they're going to inflate inflation. So these people are just supposed to go hungry? They're just supposed to continue to struggle? See, it's easy to say that when you already got yours and you got your feet kicked up and you're retired. That's the difference. Something to keep in mind.
Yes. Now, that settlement is going to basically inflate inflation.
So the current contract for the UAW, that ends on September 14th. Dagan, Guy?
Edward Lawrence at the White House. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now, I'm going to let you actually hear from the United Auto Workers president. He's going to give you their side of the story, not some guy that just retired from Chrysler or as a retired CEO from Chrysler. Now, this is Sean Fain. Sean is the UAW president. I want you to hear what Sean has to say in reference to the strike authorization for UAW.
Our union family at Altium unionized just back in December to try to combat the dangerous working conditions and the poverty wages that are being paid. So, we just scored a breakthrough agreement over there to immediately raise their wages by 25%. And that's as much as $3 to $4 an hour. So many of them are also going to receive thousands of dollars in back pay over that time frame. And I want to say, this is an interim deal, which means it goes into effect immediately while the workers at Altium continue to bargain for further wage increases as part of a complete first contract with the company. So Altium workers are voting on whether to ratify the interim deal this weekend. This interim wage agreement, it's a much needed lifeline to the workers because they're barely scraping by.
I just want to pause here for a second. Did you guys notice that he mentioned back pay? So sounds like to me, I don't know if that former CEO of Chrysler heard this, but it sounds like to me, there were some back wages that were owed to some of these employees. How did they let it get to that point? Let's continue.
But I want to be clear about one thing. It's still far, far short of what these workers deserve for the level of skill that their labor requires. The working conditions that they have to endure and the incredible value that they produce for this heavily taxpayer subsidized employer. So to Altium and General Motors, I have a simple message. This wage increase is just a start.
That's right. So you guys heard that. This is just the beginning. So that's General Motors. Teddy says wage theft is rampant. Yeah, 100%. So just FYI, there is more to come.
These battery workers deserve the same wage and salary standards that generations of auto workers have fought for, and we're going to settle for nothing less. So UAW family, you might be able to tell today that I'm coming to you from somewhere a little different than my normal environment. So I'm outside of Detroit right now. I'm actually here this morning at the Union Hall of UAW Local 862 in Louisville, Kentucky. And yesterday I had the honor of joining hundreds of our union family who work at Ford's Kentucky truck plant for a practice picket. And today I'm going to be able to walk the line again with our union family who work at Ford's Louisville assembly plant. So earlier this week, I was also able to participate in a rally and a practice picket organized by Local 51 at Stellantis' Mack assembly plant. And I also spoke on Sunday at a massive solidarity rally at Region 1, which was a great day. The rallies we've recently held, Local 51, Mack, and yesterday at Kentucky Truck Plant, and today at Louisville Assembly Plant. And then also the rally we had, the massive rally on Sunday at Region 1. Really proud of the turnout there. Thank everyone for the turnout. So, and that rally at Region 1 Sunday, it was the first regional rally in decades that our union has organized as part of a contract campaign against the Big Three. And these are just a few of the many dozens of actions being organized by locals across the country in the lead up to our contract's expiration. So the cool thing I find in all this is that there are so many locals and members organizing actions that we're not even keeping count of them anymore. I find that incredible. And it's, as I said earlier, it's exactly what I hoped would happen when I was sworn in 5 months ago and announced we'd be launching the biggest contract campaign our union's seen in decades.
So he hasn't even been union president for a year yet, and here we are. So he's not holding back.
And when I made that announcement, it was met with a lot of skepticism in some quarters. But I knew then what we're seeing now, that all of us are fed up with the Big Three's race to the bottom. We're fed up with seeing Big Three profits break the bank while we're breaking our backs. We're fed up with Big Three CEOs getting double-digit pay increases while our pay continues to go backwards.
Once again, this is another example that shows you the CEOs, for the most part, their pay, their wealth, it doubles. It continues to increase, right? But the workers who work beneath the CEOs, they're the ones that are having to struggle to make ends meet. Make it make sense, people. At some point, I wonder when will more Americans stand up and say enough to this top-down system, this top-down structure that we have in this country, enough to the corporate greed. I think a lot of people don't speak up against that because they either benefit from it or they're afraid if they do that they'll lose their job and they'll lose the little bit of income that they already get. So it's like either you're a part of that system and you're benefiting from that type of structure, or you're at the bottom of that system, but you're afraid that if you speak up in reference to it, that may be your job. And then you may not be able to find another job in order to pay your bills, depending on if they're going to give you a good recommendation or not. This is how the employer traps the employee. Just because you decide to leave your job and you decide you want to go work somewhere else, it depends on the terms of how you left. And even then, sometimes I've seen where supervisors have been pissed because you left at a time that they felt was not convenient for them. And so when your future employer asks for a reference and they say, we got to talk to your previous supervisor, and then the previous supervisor doesn't want to give you a reference just to be an ass because they didn't appreciate that you left during the time when you left. It wasn't the right timing for them. And this is honestly why I feel like a lot of people that could stand up don't stand up, because they don't want to be turned over by the system. They don't want to be pushed even further down, and they don't want to put themselves even more at risk to not being able to get a job and to have an income just to even put food on the table. This is the problem with the corrupt system that we have in this country. How many more unions do we need to hear come forward? How many more strikes do we need to see happen? How many have there been in the past 2 years that we've seen? How many more of this needs to happen for the entire country to have a wake-up call and to realize that this system in place is not working? For the majority of Americans, the vast majority of Americans are working paycheck to paycheck. Let him continue.
We're fed up with plant closures, tears, and corporate greed. Recently, one of the big three executives dismissed our bargaining demands by saying that we need to focus on reality and that we need to work together. So let's talk about reality. The reality is that the big three made a combined $21 billion in profits in just the first 6 months of this year. That's on top of the $250 billion in North American profits they made over the last decade. The reality is the big three have closed or spun off 65 plants over the last 20 years. So try telling workers at Belvedere Assembly, Lordstown Assembly, GM's Powertrain in Warren, Ford's Romeo Engine Plant, Trenton Engine Plant, Marysville Axle, Mount Elliott Tool and Die, Toledo Machining Plant. Tell them all how working together has worked out for them.
There you go. If you want to see the rest of that video, it's a longer video, but he has a really good point. It's UAW President Shawn Fain announcing strike authorization vote. That was August 25th this year, and that's on the UAW YouTube channel. So they do have their own channel. You can follow the channel to stay up to date with their progress. But he's 100% correct there. This is something that we need to continue to follow, because if this strike really kicks off, this is going to be huge. That's a lot of employees under the UAW. And let's be real, capitalists like to see these cars continue to flow, right?